In this instructional video, we'll demonstrate how to perform ejection fraction via the modified Simpson's method on the Sonosite LX. This calculation provides information on how well the heart is pumping. It is derived from measurements in two different views of the heart, both in systole and diastole. The first measurement of the calculation package is taken in the apical 4-chamber view. For optimal imaging, it is advisable to roll the patient onto their left side and bring their left arm towards their head. This brings the heart forward in the chest and makes it easier to see between the ribs and around the lungs. The orientation marker is pointed down towards the bed, and a phased array transducer is placed on the left lateral rib cage on the 4th or 5th intercostal space. Slight transducer adjustments may be necessary to elongate the left ventricle from the apex to the mitral valve, as well as depth and gain adjustments to optimize the left ventricular walls. Once you've observed a full cardiac cycle where you can see the ventricular walls in both systole and diastole, press freeze. Then press calcs within the cardiac calculations menu. You can find Simpson's ejection fraction under LV function/EF. The last column will tell you which views are needed for the calculation. It is recommended to start with diastole and then measure systole. Use the gain wheel to find the best frame and end diastole when the chamber is at its largest. Press A4CD, known as the apical 4-chamber in diastole. You'll be presented with a single caliper. Place the caliper at the insertion of the mitral valve. It may be easiest to start the trace medially, however, you can start from either insertion point. Press Select to advance the measurement. Use the touchpad to trace along the endocardial border. Take care to measure the endocardium and not the myometrium. Once you have traced to the lateral insertion of the mitral valve, press Select again to adjust the apical length as needed. When satisfied with the trace, press Save. This will store the image with the measurement and within the report. Using the same heartbeat, use the gain wheel to move into end systole, when the chamber is at its smallest. Press the A4CS, known as the apical 4-chamber in systole. Again, it may be easiest to start the trace medially. However, you can start from either insertion point. Press Select and trace within the endocardial border. If you need to adjust the measurement, you can go back on the trace and then continue forward. Press Select again to adjust the apical length as needed. Press Save to store the image with the measurement and in the report. The apical 4-chamber ejection fraction can be seen in the upper left of the clinical display and the right side of the control panel. This reflects the percentage of the 4-chamber view and is not the full modified Simpson's calculation. The next measurement is obtained in the apical 2-chamber view. Starting from the apical 4-chamber view, rotate the transducer counterclockwise, maintaining the orientation marker down towards the bed and rotating it slightly up toward the patient's right shoulder. The amount of rotation depends on the position of the patient's heart within their chest. The goal is to clearly see the walls of the left ventricle in both systole and diastole. Press Freeze. Use the touchpad or gain wheel to move back through the frames to end diastole when the left ventricle is at its largest. Press Calcs. Within the Calcs menu of LV function/EF, you'll find the Simpson's ejection fraction column. Select A2CD, known as the apical 2-chamber view in diastole. Place the caliper at the insertion point of the mitral valve. Press Select to advance the caliper along the endocardial border. If you need to adjust the measurement, you can go back on the trace and then continue forward. On the LX, you can also adjust the caliper in the touch display. Once you've traced to the mitral insertion, press Select again to adjust the apical length as needed. Press Save. On the same heartbeat, use the gain wheel to move back to end systole when the left ventricle is at its smallest. Press A2CS, known as the apical 2-chamber, in systole. Place a caliper at the insertion of the mitral valve. Press Select and trace along the endocardial border. At the other side of the mitral annulus, press Select to adjust the apical length as needed, and press Save to store the measurements with the image and within the report. You will now see the Simpson's ejection fraction in the upper left of the clinical display. To view the calculations in the report, select Report and Worksheet from the home screen. You can delete a measurement in the Calcs tab within the report by selecting the measurement and pressing Delete.